It's Thursday, November 8th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we get a tour of the new Hyannis Fire Station, and we do a deep dive on building coastal resiliency. Let's start with some news you can use. Let's talk trash. Take the town of Barnstable's recycling survey. Please help the Department of Public Works to better serve the solid waste disposal and recycling needs of our community by taking a very brief online survey. You can access the survey by entering the following link into your computer browser, www.townofbarnstable.ma.us. The survey will be open through November 15th and can be found on the town's website again, www.townofbarnstable.us. You'll find the link at the top right-hand corner. The Hyannis Fire Department has moved into their new firehouse, and Channel 18 tagged along with Chief Burke for a tour of the station to see some of the new amenities.
Chief Burke, we're here in the new station. You guys moved in about 2 weeks ago. This is so amazing. It's so exciting. You guys have been waiting a really long time for this. It's funny, I was driving around the other day and I saw "Vote Yes" for a new fire station sticker on someone's car. And I was like, here we are, it's done.
Well, phase one's completed, so
Yep.
we still have a little more work to do, or a lot more work to do. But
Yep.
We have been operating out of here for about a week or so, and the firefighters are excited and very grateful, and it is a beautiful brand new station.
Let's talk a little bit about what went into coming over here to the new station. You guys had a big move. I know you're still moving. There's still a lot to be unpacked, so we're only going to see like the first floor today, but we'll come back when you're ready and we'll see some of the stuff that's upstairs. But you know, it was a lot to move from the old station to the new station. Did you find that to be a little interesting?
It was challenging, so
Yeah.
certainly our firefighters and staff stepped up to the task. So it's a little bit like moving a home in the sense you have to move all your stuff over, but importantly for us, we had to continue operating, so we had to move all of the apparatus, all the firefighters' gear, all of their equipment, and also in 2018 systems. So we had to move our phone system and have the phone lines moved over and our IT support. So a lot of moving parts. We moved last Tuesday and Wednesday. Part of that move was it was a scheduled cut over of the phone lines, so that was a large part of it. So it was a ton of work, and as you mentioned, we're still very much in flux in terms of getting set up here. But we're, again, happy to be here.
Right, just like you said, it's like moving into a house. You know, you don't move in one day. It definitely takes some time. You're going to slowly unpack things. You have a lot more space over here, so I bet it's a lot of figuring out where things are going to go, because now you have, I mean, the storage I've seen already is amazing. So trying to figure out the best place to keep things.
We are fortunate because there's still 2 phases of construction left. We're still trying to figure out where things are today and where they'll be, next spring when the building's finally completed.
Great. So we're in the apparatus bay right now, which, wow, compared to where you were keeping your equipment before, it was so cramped. The ceilings were, a lot lower. You couldn't quite fit everything in and out easily. But this is amazing, and you're able to fit every piece of equipment in here, and you have doors on either side.
Correct.
So you don't have to move one truck to get another truck out. Is that correct?
Correct. So we don't have space for everything yet. That will be when
Part
the
of phase
last
2.
phase is completed. But we do have most of our equipment inside, and yes, we can now essentially respond without having to manipulate different equipment and move things out of the way. So we're going to have a little bit of a challenge over the winter in terms of getting everything under cover, but we have some solutions to that we're working on.
Wonderful. Should we walk around and kind of check things out?
Sure. I think it'd be great if we showed you the kitchen and then the house watch area, and we'll show you where the guys are spending their time and the firefighters are training and getting ready to respond.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
So we're here in the ready room, and wow, I wish this was my kitchen at my house. I actually never saw your space in the old station because I know it was kind of not the greatest. So, but I saw a picture of it the other day, and this I would say is a major upgrade for you guys.
It's certainly a step up. So
Yeah.
the old kitchen was in the basement of the firehouse. So this is essentially where the firefighters spend any downtime they have, which here is not all that frequent, but this is where they have their meals together and where they actually accomplish some training and where they do their morning briefings and establish the plan of the day and kind of work through what they need to do. It all happens in this space. And
Yeah.
it's large enough and bright enough and has everything they need to support them. So they're very, very excited about this space.
Yeah, this is it's an amazing space. I can just see them all sitting at the table. This beautiful table. Let's talk about this table a little bit because it's just. It's amazing, and I know some of the firefighters here had a hand in helping to create it.
Sure, the firefighters did create it.
Oh, okay.
So the steel was donated by All Cape Welding, and the firefighters used some reclaimed barn board donated by Stonewood Products, and they were able to craft that table, and it's pretty remarkable.
So I know in a lot of the spaces we've been in so far today have these TV screens, and they kind of are everything that could be going on right now in the station, and they're a way for the firefighters to know who's out, who's in, what the weather looks like. So let's talk a little bit about those screens.
So one of the things we're attempting to do is leverage technology to help gain situational awareness, understand what's going on in the community and within our own department. That should allow us to make more effective decisions and more timely decisions. So yeah, we're using status boards off of our records management system that do exactly what you said. They demonstrate and display where apparatus is, what calls are going on. Other challenges like Main Street being blocked because of the water line relining project are all displayed there. So again, we have some pretty good awareness of what's going on within our district.
Excellent. Now we're going to go into the next space, and what is that?
It's a house watch,
House
or
watch.
somewhat known as dispatch, where the firefighters are able to answer phones and monitor radio transmissions.
Okay, great. Let's go check that out.
Great.
So we're in the house watch room, which is also can be called the dispatch room. You guys consolidated your dispatch with the Barnstable Police Department when they upgraded their system. How is that going?
Oh, great. Yeah, so the merge happened in June, and a lot of work went into doing that right. So our firefighters and staff did a lot of planning with Barnstable Police staff to make sure that would work. And thus far, like any major project, there's always like challenges and things you need to refine and work on. But overall, it's been excellent. So this room would have been the dispatch center prior to that merge. What we're using for now is what is kind of colloquially known as house watch, which essentially means we have a firefighter in this room when they're in the building. So there is something for the community to be aware of, the fact that if all of the companies are out, there may not be a firefighter in here for a time period. But in general terms, if there's firefighters on duty, there'll be somebody here to answer questions from the public. But they should be aware that there may be instances where that doesn't happen anymore. And that's one of the downsides to merging dispatch. So for all the positives, one thing we did lose was a firefighter here 24/7 all the time.
Right. We did a tour of the BPD dispatch a little while back and got to see kind of the layout, and it was nice to see that they have one dispatch that is strictly fire, and that is their job. That's what they're doing while they're there, and they've got it down.
Yeah, it really is excellent. And back to some of the technology that we're using, because they're there and they're entering things into our computer dispatch system, which then goes to our station alerting system, it really has refined and made us more efficient. So that is working very, very well.
I'm so glad to hear that. I know that the public is probably happy to hear that too.
We hope so.
Yeah. So we're here in the gear room with Captain Greg Dardia. You were actually part of the building committee to build the fire station, and we're in the gear room. And this is a big step up from what you guys had before with all the equipment out in the bays with the trucks.
It is. So early on in the building committee, one of the things that we learned was isolating your gear from day areas or other portions of the building. We've learned that a lot of particulate matter, carcinogens, build up on this turnout gear, so we isolated it in this room. Something we learned not that long ago, but it's kind of taking off industry-wide. Just steps we can take to better protect ourselves. We were able to catch that early on in this process with this new building.
Yeah, and in this space, you also have a decontamination. Is it a room or area where you can kind of, when you come back from a fire, you can clear all your gear so you're ready for the next one, right?
It's a separate room that's isolated, and that'll be step one. So what we do now is called a gross decon at the scene of a fire, basically a rinse off of all the big stuff. Once we get back here, the gear never comes into our living quarters or into this area until it's cleaned. Step one goes into a decon room where it's broken down, washed, dried, put back together. Everybody has a second set, so there's really no downtime or out of service time for us. And then we can rotate those gear through the washing process just to keep it safer for everybody.
This is definitely a step up. I know before you had the gear in the bay with the trucks on almost like rolling racks. So I'd say this is pretty nice. Everyone has their own space. They have shelves. They've got, it looks like they got a pretty good amount of space to keep all their gear, and they're ready to go at a moment's notice, which is
And
what
that's
it's all about.
With the firehouse, it's all about response time. You know, early on in the conversations we had designing this building, you really need to make the layout that maximizes our response time, or minimizes, I should say.
Yeah.
So locations and pathways. We actually closed off a pathway from this gear room right to the kitchen. The turnout time would have been better, but the issues we've discovered with the turnout gear and the contaminants, you know, we reduced that, but also kept it central to maximize that response time. You know, so there's a lot that goes into it. Earlier days, the stuff was right next to the apparatus. That's the quickest, you know, most logical place to have it. But, you know, as we learn and get better, we can kind of do both. Some equipment involved with that decon stuff, but yeah, this is a huge improvement over how it was. Just more space. We'd have guys elbowing each other.
Oh
before
yeah,
trying to get dressed. Yeah.
And this is a really great centrally located space because right outside this door is the dorms. Right outside the door at the end of the hall is the bay. So, I mean, it's in a good location, so it's not too difficult to get to. And the station is pretty easy to maneuver through, so hopefully it'll all work out.
Yeah, a lot of thought went into it by, all the members here, through the committee. It makes sense. Everything is in its spot for a specific reason. And, we've only been in about a week or so, but it's all making sense right now.
Good, great.
It is.
And you're going to show us one of the dorm rooms, so let's go check one of those out.
Absolutely. So the way the bunk rooms are laid out is, compared to our old station, was one big mass area, sleeping dormitory, kind of traditional then, but 2 individual bunk rooms, basically gender neutral. We have a mixed workforce. So gender neutral bunk rooms and bathrooms, changing area outside that's separated by a door. We do have room for expansion if our manpower ever increases in the future, which it should. Storage for bedding, linens, everything you see is simple, durable, big enough. The locker room, same thing, an improvement over there. We have a little more storage. The whole idea is just to keep everything contained. And,
Right.
when you come to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be like a new, like no one's been there. That's the idea. It's just very, very clean, tidy, but adequate storage for everything.
So it looks like you have you could have 6 people assigned to each dorm room.
Correct. Again, storm coverage, we have bed space for the shift. As they increase, they start doubling up. So if we add for storm strength or any other thing, they start doubling up. The capacity is there.
Okay.
So
Usually at one time there'd be just one person in each
Most
dorm
times
room
there will be,
while they're on
correct.
regular duty.
Yep, most times there will be.
And then when you get more people on duty, if there's a storm or an event or whatever, you can double up. I
Yep.
get it. Okay.
They're bunking up. Some of the big things, the big improvement, I would say with this station and the dorm rooms is the alerting system. It's a soft ramp up. There's been tons of studies done on, being woken up by a loud or
Right.
sudden, that's just the way it was. Softer lighting, gradual ramp up of audible voice speakers, night lighting, red lighting, a lot faster. I won't get into dispatch, some of the improvements there, but just a lot more efficient compared to the old building.
Excellent.
Dependable equipment, accurate, audible. Yeah, huge
Yeah.
improvement over the previous station.
Right, and it's these are beautiful rooms. It's not like the firefighters are spending a ton of time in here, but when they are in here, they have their own bedding. They can put their own sheets on, their own blanket. Have the comfort level be what they want it to be for when they're well rested and ready to go out and do
Yep.
what they need to do.
Again, a lot of thought went into the actual layout of it. How do you fit 12 people into an area like this?
Right.
But
So there's 12 dorm rooms.
yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Very cool.
How do you build resilient coastal communities facing the rising concerns of climate change? Elizabeth Jenkins, Director of Planning and Development, takes a deep dive into mitigation, municipal vulnerability, and the tools and resources available to the town to plan for an uncertain future. It's all about the water, or is it about coastal resiliency? It can be both. With me today, Director of Planning and Development, Elizabeth Jenkins. There's so much talk about coastal resiliency and what are we going to do with climate and change and our coastline. And you said we have 100 plus miles of coastline.
170 miles of coastline just here in Barnstable alone.
Just here in Barnstable. So there's a lot to talk about with coastal resiliency. We're going to break it down into 3 things today. So first up is hazard mitigation plans. Talk to us about those.
Sure. So this is kind of a statewide planning framework that encourages municipalities to look at the natural hazards that impact your community, and really a full range of things, not just coastal resiliency issues, and certainly those are primary here in Barnstable, but flooding, storm surge, even things like drought and wildfire we take a look at. And it asks us to really evaluate where our risks and vulnerabilities are related to these natural hazards. And, of course, we spend a lot of time in terms of preparedness, response, what to do if one of these events happen. But what can we do from a planning perspective? Again, knowing that there is risk here in a coastal community, that we are going to experience these events. What kind of investments can we make as a community to help buffer ourselves from the impacts of these hazards. What can we do to plan ahead for them so when they do happen, we bounce back a little bit easier and we're protecting ourselves ahead of time. So this is our hazard mitigation plan. It's a plan that we update on a regular basis every 5 years. It's time to update ours again. So we've been going through the process again to kind of reevaluate our risks and hazards and develop an action plan across the town to think about how can we begin to mitigate these risks. And if we do this and we have this plan in place, then the state rewards that by making grant funding opportunities available to implement the actions that we've identified in the plan.
So some of these actions, and again, when we talk about mitigation, it's not adaptation, it's mitigation. This is like trying to stop what's already going to come down anyways.
Right.
So, you know, this could be any kind of storm in the winter, it could be a hurricane, it could be any number of things. So when you start to look at some of those plans, what are some of the areas that you're concerned with from an economic development and a coastal resiliency? You know, north side, south side?
Sure, in terms of geography in town. So again, we've been doing obviously climate preparedness planning, whether it's formally or informally, here for a long time. So when you go and you talk to our residents, you talk to our emergency officials, and you see, obviously we have the most vulnerability along our coastlines. On the North Shore, it's really kind of in the Commerce Road area. I know we've had a lot of conversations about that as a community. A lot of the north side is sheltered by Sandy Neck, which is a barrier beach, but that area is, it doesn't get that protection from that Sandy Neck barrier beach. So it becomes very vulnerable in terms of flooding that comes both from the inland marshes as well as from the ocean. And then the south side, another barrier beach, we have the Long Beach barrier beach, which is in that case a developed barrier beach. We're very fortunate that Sandy Neck on the north side is a preserved and undeveloped barrier beach, so functions in a very natural way. But on the south side, the Long Beach barrier beach is a developed barrier beach, has a lot of real estate developed there. So we see a lot of vulnerability there, and really up through that whole Centerville River system, a lot of flood zone and vulnerable properties there. Especially those kind of small historic homes that may not have been invested in and developed up out of the floodplain. So there, and then we do see kind of areas more urban in character, especially around the kind of Hyannis Port into the Hyannis Inner Harbor area, where again we just see a lot more density of people in development that are very vulnerable in terms of storm surge and hurricanes as well.
So you get this plan done, and the state's going to give out grants to do specific things, but it's the municipal vulnerability preparedness.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's give everything a really long name, but we'll just call it MVP, right?
Right.
So what is that about? What are these granting opportunities?
Yeah, so MVP is kind of similar. It was part of Governor Baker's $300 million commitment to addressing climate change and coastal resiliency issues here in Massachusetts. So this was a grant opportunity that the Baker-Polito administration made available to cities and towns across the Commonwealth. We were one of, I think, 82 cities awarded in the second round of grants, and we were allowed entry to participation in this program, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness MVP program. And what this does is it's similar to the hazard mitigation planning framework that the state asks us to do, but it takes it a step forward a little bit and asks us not just to look at the hazards that we've faced historically as a community, but ones that we expect to face in light of things like rising sea levels and climate change. So in working with some of the kind of state-sponsored research that's gone on around that, integrating that into our preparedness and response planning here in town, and thinking about our infrastructure impacts, but also our environmental impacts and our social impacts of climate change going forward. So What this process is essentially it will engage interested parties. If anybody's interested, please contact us in a comprehensive one-day workshop that looks to evaluate this. Again, really understanding what our risks and vulnerabilities are, and looking at it through these different and multiple lenses, and then beginning to develop and prioritize actions and responses to that. And much like the hazard mitigation plan, by doing this and completing this process allows us access to a second round of action grants to implement the actions identified in the plan.
Right. So Massachusetts and Governor Baker's administration has really literally taken this climate change and coastal resiliency opportunities and challenges to heart, has funded a lot of different things, has also funded a pilot program for the town of Barnstable.
Yeah, and that comes from a little bit of a different place. That's actually
Sure.
federal funding.
Okay.
It comes from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and that was actually a grant that was given to our regional planning agency, the Cape Cod Commission, to look at, again, we're a coastal community, understanding what our impacts are, and this project, I think, and the name's going to escape me because they're all so similar.
Right.
The Resilient Cape Cod, the Resilient Cape Cod, a regional project. Again, the Resilient Cape Cod project looks at what are the coastal impacts from flooding, storm surge, and coastal erosion. So kind of the three major impacts that we see on the coast, and what are potential responses to that we're going to have as a region, and also looking at that on a neighborhood scale. And what are the impacts of those decisions from an environmental perspective, from an economic perspective, on our property values and tax base? And it allows us to think about our responses, again, our responses being a wide range of things in terms of building infrastructure or changing the way we develop, putting new regulations in place, things like that. And what are the kind of follow-on impacts of that from those different perspectives? So this is a project that the Commission's been working on. They've been kind of in the early phases of that, developing out this matrix of different responses with scientists and other sort of experts across the Cape, and putting it together into what they call a decision support tool that'll help take all this kind of information and economic analysis. They've engaged an environmental economist actually to look at the impacts of applying these different solutions, climate solutions. And they've developed this into a tool. And Barnstable is going to be our pilot community where we go out and test this tool and see what kind of values that certainly making these different decisions will have on our community.
So it's kind of one of those things where, chicken and egg, right? So you want to try something, but you don't want to implement it unless you know that it's going to work.
Right.
But coastal resiliency is one of those things where you don't have a lot of time. It seems like every year there's more doom and gloom, there's more sea level rise. From an economic development standpoint, how do you balance that with growth?
Yeah.
And especially on our coastlines. Like I said, there's a lot of coastline. Some of it's preserved already, like the Sandy Neck area, but there's decisions that have to come through the town to kind of look at this as a whole now and say, what are we going to do?
Absolutely, and so if I'm an individual homeowner, certainly, we have a lot of investment on our coastlines. People love living near the water. It's beautiful. It's why they're here on Cape Cod. We have a lot of high-value real estate on our coastlines, and these properties are kind of on the front lines, having to make these decisions of what do I do with this major investment that I have, and how do I respond to the fact that Cape Cod is a place that's changing, that's not staying the same, on a very basic level, and that's what this decision support tool is really there to help people understand is as a community and both as individuals that we really need to be cognizant of the different options that are out there, the full scale of options, and thinking about how it affects us economically. If we choose to armor a coastline, that's going to have impacts on a recreational beach that's a mile down the road. You're not letting those natural processes happen. If that sand isn't getting through, then how does that impact us as a community that values recreation and where recreation and tourism is a big part of what we do. So
And what do seawalls look like?
right, versus restoring wetlands.
Right.
So that full kind of scale of different options that are out there, and really, on a big level, trying to understand the impacts of that decision making. So they're big choices, and I think the idea here is to start to educate people about what the responses are, and again, start to think about these cost-value trade-offs of these big decisions that we're going to have to make as a coastal community.
Right, sooner rather than later. So let's talk timeline.
Yeah. So with the MVP process, again, that's a community engagement process. We are working with the Commission and Barnstable County Cooperative Extension to do that. They're great partners with climate change planning and coastal resiliency planning with us already. Our goal is to hold that session before the end of the year, so probably sometime early December. And then to hold some follow-up sessions on the Resilient Cape Cod support tool at the beginning of next year. So if people want to get involved, we'll post all this information up on our Planning and Development Department website. We have a coastal resiliency and climate change page that we're developing. So if people are interested, developing a clearinghouse there for people to learn more.
Excellent information today. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you, Paula.
Here's a look at our community calendar. The Sturgis Charter School's fall production, Stage Left and Right, presents Twelfth Night by William Shakespeare, the 2018 fall production. Directed by Anna Botsford and Diana Young, starts at November 9th at 7 p.m., November 10th, 2 and 7 p.m., November 11th, 2 p.m. at the Tilden Arts Center, Cape Cod Community College, 2240 INO Road, West Barnstable. You can buy tickets at the door for $10, general admission $5 for students, any school. Comments, suggestions, accolades? Connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. Email us or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.